Baku will host the annual conference of the International Association of Ports and Harbors next year. Today our guest Patrick Verhoeven, who is the Managing Director of Strategy and Policy of the International Association of Ports and Harbors, will talk about several issues, as well as the significance of the decision to hold the AIPH conference in Baku next year. Hello, Mr. Patrick Verhoeven.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Mr. Verhoeven, what is the role of the International Association of Ports and Harbors? How many members does it have? And with which countries does it cooperate more closely?
Well, our organization was founded back in 1955 in California. We have, in the meantime, about 180 ports in 90 countries worldwide. So over the years we've developed and have established a membership in all the major regions of the world. The Americas, Europe, Africa, Asia, and so on. And our role is to be the global voice of the ports industry.
So what is the aim of your visit to Azerbaijan, and what are your first-time impressions?
Well, it's my first time here, first time in your country, and the first time in Baku. And of course the principal reason I'm here is to discuss with the Port of Baku the preparations for the conference that we're holding in May, from the 8th until the 11th May here. To discuss program, to discuss the content, the format, how we're going to organize this. And I've spent 2 days here now talking to the team. I also visited the new port expansion in Alat, and that all will be part of the topic for the conference that we will have here next year.
So since when has the Port of Baku become the full member of the IAPH?
If I'm not mistaken, it was in 2010 that they applied for membership, so that's already a couple of years. As I said, we have now around 90 ports that are in our membership. They're quite diverse, and I think Port of Baku is quite a unique member of our organization, because of course it's a seaport, but at the same time it's based at a closed sea, which is the Caspian Sea, and it's one of our, let's say, prominent members that we have in the connection between East and West, which is the Eurasia region. So we're very happy that Baku indeed joined us, because it strengthens the diversity of our membership.
So during the annual conference of IAPH that was held in Panama in May in 2016, it was unanimously decided to hold the annual conference in Baku in 2018. Yep. So which issues will be discussed at this conference, and what are your expectations from this conference?
The overall theme that we have chosen for the conference is connectivity. And that has several dimensions. Of course, the most obvious one is the infrastructure component. And then we talk about connecting ports to the major corridors in the world, including land-based corridors, but also maritime corridors. And that interaction is quite important, and to see that new trends that we see now, like the Belt and Road strategy from the Chinese government. What does that mean in terms of connecting East and West and further down to Africa and other parts of the world? So that will be one particular dimension. A second dimension is that, of course, with infrastructure works like these, we're not just connecting hardware, we're also connecting people in a way. People with very different cultural backgrounds, with different kind of a way of looking at business as well. And that is also something we want to bring into this conference, is to how do we make sure that we're not just having the hardware, but that we actually have very good cross-border cooperation between these nations. A third dimension, which I think is particularly important here, is the development of a hub and a maritime center, which is again more than infrastructure. What kind of services do we offer in hubs? What kind of facilities do we have, like free trade zones? What kind of fiscal regime are we offering? What kind of legal regime are we offering? I think that's a third important dimension. And finally, what also is part of all this is the environmental component. And how can we make sure that with moving goods, we will always be moving goods, and trade is booming and trade will grow, but what is the most, let's say, eco-efficient way of getting goods from point A to B? Is it predominantly shipping? Is it a combination rail and shipping? What can we do to cut emissions to make sure that these chains or these flows of goods are, let's say, as eco-efficient and as carbon limited or even carbon neutral as possible? So that will be the fourth dimension. So that's about 4 sessions that we will have in this conference.
So what do you think about Azerbaijan's role in this conference?
I think it's the first time, at least for us, that we host or that we have the conference in Baku, in the country and in this region. So I think it's quite significant that we can do that, especially since Azerbaijan and Port of Baku are really at the crossroads of the east-west corridors. And we will see how the Chinese strategy with Belt and Road, how that is going to develop, but clearly there is an interest to have that rail connection and then a sea connection here in the Caspian area. So that will definitely put, Azerbaijan and Port of Baku really on the map and on the focus of these geopolitical discussions. Because what I said to you before, it's of course a business conference in the first place, but at the same time we want to make sure policymakers are present and get into dialogue with us, and that means of course your politicians and decision makers, but we also want to bring international policymakers from the International Maritime Organization, and we're also in contact with the European Union to see whether we can get some civil servants or politicians also to this conference, so that it's more than just business talking to business, but it's business talking to policy.
So as you have visited the Alat port in south of Baku, and you have seen the free trade zone to be established there.
Yes.
So what is your impressions in this regard, and could you share your views?
I was there yesterday. I visited the site and I saw the construction works, and I also was informed about the phased approach. It's a three-phased approach, which I understand phase one should be ready and operational by the time we will have our conference here in May. So that will be part of the program as well. There will be the on-site visit for delegates to come and see how this project is developing. I think the phased approach is clearly a very good approach, and what I also understood from yesterday's visit, it's important that the initial visits are made here, and they're made by your government, they're made by, let's say, the sector and the port here. So that means that you're not immediately completely dependent on foreign investment. Foreign investment will be important, of course, in the next stages of development, but the, let's say, anchorage of the project in Baku, in Azerbaijan, and that goes for all infrastructure projects, I think it's quite very important. If we're talking about global development strategies, global infrastructure development, it's very important that the assets also, have a local dimension and a regional dimension, and so that the benefits are, of course, for the flow of goods, but that part of the benefits also go back to the region where, the project or the infrastructure connection is being developed. And that was explained to me yesterday as a key objective also, is that you don't immediately sell out your infrastructure. I mean, you have to keep strategic control. Of course, you can bring private operators through concessions or other agreements, and that's very necessary, I think, in the further development. But to have local anchorage of a project like this, I think, is a key issue.
So, Mr. Verhoeven, in general, what do you think about Azerbaijan's transit potential, transit opportunities?
Well, you see it already now that connections are developing with, or they are already existing with Kazakhstan, with Turkmenistan. I understand there you have already quite important maritime connections that are now going to develop further. Via Kazakhstan, you have the rail connection, of course, to China. And that is going to be the major issue to watch, is how is this going to develop? Because most of the traffic coming from east to west at the moment is predominantly maritime. It's becoming by the big container vessels, 20,000 TEU vessels from Far East that go through the Suez Canal and then reach Europe. Will this be a game changer, the Belt and Road, by having part of the traffic via rail? I think that is the development that we need to watch now very carefully. How is that going to happen? And of course you have kind of a chicken and an egg situation here, because you need to provide infrastructure for this to happen. But to provide infrastructure, you need to have some idea what kind of flows you may expect. And I understand that is difficult, and those are difficult decisions to take for governments and ports. And again, that's why I think the phased approach that Alat is going through with phase one, and then according to development, the next phases, is a very good policy.
So did you share your experience about the development of ports with Azerbaijan officials?
Yes, I did with the team here at Port of Baku. We had extensive meetings yesterday also about, how are we going to fit what is going on here in the region? How do we bring that in a broader context that will be of interest for all the ports of the world, because we will have all the continents represented here. And everybody is looking now at these new strategies, these new geopolitical strategies, these new infrastructure developments from east to west. And I think people will be very interested to compare notes, so to speak, how infrastructure providers are going about it and how they can secure that they can provide the service, but at the same time can also make sure the regional interest or national or local interest is well represented.
Mr. Verhoeven, thank you very much for your comprehensive replies.
You're very welcome.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.